Over the course of history, all great societies have eventually created unsustainable amounts of debt. And because of that, governments are forced to print money. And if you look at the circumstances that currently exist here in the United States, you've heard about the stock bubble, you've heard about the housing bubble. Nobody is really talking about the debt bubble that exists. Our government has a published debt of $8.5 trillion, but if you add in additional liabilities such as Social Security, Medicare, pension guarantee programs, it's estimated to be upwards of $45 trillion. Then if you add in federal, state, municipalities, county, consumer, corporate, our debt load right now is close to being at the $50 trillion level. There is absolutely no way for this country to exist unless we continue to print money.
It is imperative to understand that paper currencies depreciate. I think it's easily said this way, that paper money becomes worth less, and then it becomes worthless. Now, based on that premise, if we go back to what happened in the 1980s, early 1980, we had silver that went roughly from the $2 level in the early 70s up to $50 an ounce for a 25-fold increase. Right now, what we have is a money supply increase from 1980 to right now of about 7 times as much. Well, silver reached $50 an ounce when there was 1.5 billion ounces more available to the market than there is now.
There's only $800 billion in America in cash. And out of that, we somehow get an $11 trillion economy. We have the personal debt of the United States, people about $30 trillion. There is a derivative hedge book out there of $450 trillion. We have a current account deficit of $800 billion a year. We've got a budget deficit alone of $600 billion, and that's not even most of it. The majority of federal spending comes in supplemental requests and off-budget things, and it comes out to over $1 trillion per year in an $11 trillion economy. How can you do that? That's the part that's so staggering to me, that people actually believe this will work out. It cannot. It never has, and it never will.
The government is going to have to take on more and more debt to keep this game going. So, I mean, I think deficits, which appear to be high now, are going materially higher, which again is good for precious metals.
I do feel that there has to be a sort of hangover after the party, and we've seen a situation here where the United States has built up huge debts in its own currency, where the US dollar has weakened somewhat, but arguably hasn't really paid the full price for the profligacy that has taken place over the last few years, and in fact continues today in terms of the size of the current account deficit. Foreigners have been persuaded to essentially part with their wealth in return for US IOUs, and I'm not at all convinced that that can continue for very much longer. And I think what we're beginning to see are probably that system of funding of US overconsumption, be it by government or by the private sector, by consumers, ending. I think we're perhaps now entering the final phase of the dollar's unchallenged primacy.
Today, there's a brand new element of silver demand, which is investment demand. And we didn't have that in much of the last 15 or 16 years. There's a new ETF, which is an exchange-traded fund, which has consumed over 100 million ounces of silver, I think, in the last 5 or 6 months. Gigantic amount of new silver demand. That's one of the reasons the silver price has gone up.
Well, in silver, I think investment demand has really been the primary reason why silver prices really have done so exceptionally well. In fact, silver has outperformed gold. I think a great deal of interest in silver really as an alternative investment to bonds and equities, and it's been quite a good investment this year.
You look at the largest pension plans in the world, you look at the largest endowments in the world, and all of the sudden in the last 4 to 6 years, commodities have become an asset class for those funds.
And of course, within the commodities, precious metals plays a part, and that's a change that's occurring that wasn't there 5 years ago. And those guys going into precious metals has huge positive implications for the price.
You can think about it as like the ocean is like the general money supply, and you might think of gold as like an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and you might think of silver as being a kid's wading pool. A little bit of water in that wading pool will move it up in that wading pool very quickly. An Olympic pool takes a little more, but you know, we're talking about an ocean's worth of capital floating around, not knowing what to do, scared capital that's shifting around, looking for the best opportunity. When a little bit of that ocean starts flowing into that Olympic pool, and then some of that spills over into the wading pool, where do you think those markets are going to go? Is the dollar buying you the same today as it was 5 years ago? 2 years ago? What's your gasoline bill look like? Is what's taking place in your life, are you feeling wealthy, or are you more concerned about your financial health? We have got a world now that once this consciousness gets into the public, that they've got to protect themselves, they've got to do something with some percentage of their savings, and they start moving into this in a significant way. I think it's not going to be just a United States phenomena. I think it's going to be a worldwide phenomenon.